this information that we're going to be discussing all about property development. What are some quick wins that you can get going? How to deal with supplies during this lockdown? How can you keep your projects moving forward with all the little tricks of the trade? I've mentioned it before, tricks of the trade, right? It's tricks of the trade.
DIY, which stands for, do it yourself, not destroy it yourself. We're going to cover that in some detail, I'm sure, with Mr. DIY. Guest who is going to be joining us very soon, and there's going to be lots to talk about and lots to share because Craig has done so many things in his journey.
Oh, you just gave it away. Now they already know it's the guy's name. His name's in the title. The first thing you need to know is comment. Where are you? Where are you geographically? Are you still trapped at home? What has changed during this lockdown over the last week since the announcement? Are you back to work? Were you always at work? That's the first thing I want to know. Are people still having dinner at the same time? Or is your routine totally gone out of the window?
Or have you replaced your dinner with alcohol?
Yeah, maybe, possibly. That could be it. Okay, good. Give us a wave on Instagram. Comment if you are on YouTube. Or if you're on Facebook right now and you're watching us right now, I want you to share it. I want you to be brave enough to give us a big share and get it out in front as many people as possible. Now, why would you do that? Because I know there's a lot of people who are like, they're shy watchers, they're kind of the secret watchers. I understand that. But if you can find it in your heart to at least put this information that we're going to be discussing all about property development, what are some quick wins that you can get going, how to deal with supplies during this lockdown, how can you keep your projects moving forward with all the little tricks of the trade. I've mentioned it before, tricks of the trade, right? It's tricks of the trade.
DIY, which stands for, do it yourself, not destroy it yourself. We're going to cover that in some detail, I'm sure, with Mr. DIY. But listen, it's going to be an exciting session because not only are we going to learn from somebody that is doing it right now in the market in lots of different areas, so covering different strategies of how to create a great income for yourself, how to have an abundance in your life, but how to stay humble, how to deal with negativity online, like people that may not think you're so great and may share that with a lot of people, like how to deal with that. We get a lot of people coming to us all the time, don't we? Like, how do you deal with negativity or trolling online? Well, we're going to find out exactly how he deals with it as well, but lots of exciting things that he's done, is doing, and is coming up. So we're going to hear lots and lots about that. Now, he is a TV personality. He was the first ever, we were just talking about this, hilarious, first ever winner of Big Brother. So 20 years ago that was. Can you believe that? How crazy is that? 20 years ago. So lots of things going on around that right now in that space with Davina herself, but so many exciting things going on, and we cannot wait to hear more about your amazing journey, Craig, and what value we can add to you all by hearing it. So welcome to the stage virtually. COVID safe.
Thank you. Hello, good afternoon, good evening, Tricia and Mark. It's a great pleasure to be here on your platform. It's exciting.
Yeah, it's
awesome to have you on here. Many people have been waiting to hear all of your inside secrets of how did they give their properties the edge. I mean, that's a good question. Who, comment right now, who actually wants to give their property to the edge? Who wants some cutting edge, fancy designs, ways to, I've seen actually, what I've been watching, Craig, from you, is how you make use, and you're very resourceful from just everyday materials that you come across, and you make it look very special.
But absolutely. And I think sometimes you kind of have to, I've been in the building industry now.
Now you have to.
3 years I've been in the building industry, probably before you two were born. And you know what? When I very first started out, I was only a labourer in a bricklaying company that worked for the council. And of course, I didn't have much money. I was only on an apprentice amount, and I was doing my day release courses, night school classes, and I couldn't even afford to buy tools, new tools. So I had to go to the car boot sale to buy tools. So I started off with absolutely nothing. So I think when you start off that way, you kind of always have it in your mind, be cautious about what you spend and how you get things and how you get there. And still today, 33 years on, I can afford to buy new tools, that's okay now. But I look at scrap materials and think, you know what? I'm going to give them a second use. I'm either going to make money out of it or make it into something useful, better for the environment, it's better for your pocket, and you get self-satisfaction out of it. Being resourceful with second-hand materials.
Good. And you know what's beautiful about what people can learn from this right now is the fact that sometimes when we're doing our trainings and programs, and I share my experience of I came from totally nothing, and the same as you when it came to buying, because when I left school 15 years old, I was straight into the building trade, went straight onto a building site. And I remember I went to this not a car boot sale, but I went to a warehouse, and this warehouse was selling like tools for like less than £1, you know, trowels, you know, hammers and things like that. So it's like the cheapest kit. My trap was the first one to rust. I went to chop a brick with it. I chopped a brick with it, and it like a chunk came out my trowel. You know, this was the stuff I was working with. The handle had been taped on that many times. I'm not even sure if there was a handle. It was just tape. It was just tape on it.
Yeah, I've had all them tools.
Yeah, but without that experience of having to deal with those times where you don't really have the shiniest things, maybe because people they come on our program, they learn how to invest in property and build multi-million-pound property portfolios with zero of their own money, but they might miss out on a few little tips and tricks and how to be resourceful along the way. So if anybody watching right now, even if you're watching on the replay, type in the comments, what is it that you would like to ask Craig or any of us right now on how to get the most out of a situation? Because I'll tell you, there's people, Craig, they're ripping out things, old sinks, old toilets, you know, beautiful old Victorian design,
covering up mint and doors. I mean, what is wrong with people?
It's a shame, isn't it? It's a shame. It really, really is. You know, I've bought many old Victorian Georgian type houses over the years, you know, from auctions. And the first thing you do is you go in and assess the structure of the building, and then you start taking away all that old plywood and stuff that they've put in front of the fireplaces, and they've had suspended ceilings in, you know, hiding all that beautiful coving that's in there. It's a sin. It really, really is a sin. I've also been on the other end of the scale when I've been renovating things for customers of mine. You know, prior to Big Brother, when I run a building company, we had about 30 guys. And sometimes we'd have an instructions off a customer. They've bought this house. They want it basically stripping out. They want to make as much room in there as possible. And a big old cast fireplace, they don't want it. And you're like, no, please, you must leave this in the building. They're like, no, it's got to go. We're putting this there. There's a doorway going in there, etc. So everything we've ripped out, I was a hoarder. I couldn't throw them away. I couldn't give them away. I used to stack them up high, clean them all up, and either sell them on to next customers or refit them in some of my own houses, you know.
Absolutely, that's it. Because the thing is, I'm very much like with the new builds that we do, it's all about building with reclaimed bricks where possible, making it look as much in keeping with the environment that it's in as possible, because nobody just wants a red box to live in, because this is what they all look like. So where like getting the lime lintels in and stuff like that is just incredible. But at the same time, some strategies in property will make it so that you do need to remove certain things. So if you do need to drop ceilings to be able to put waste pipes in, if you're adding loads of en suites in the room. So for example, HMOs that we do, sometimes it's necessary to do that. So we drop the ceiling and put all the waste pipes in for the upstairs extra bathrooms, or maybe we have to take a fireplace out because it's reducing the damp or the draft that's being created in that bedroom. Plus, it's like an area of space that you can utilize for storage and stuff like that. So like, but having said that, where possible, we'll get these amazing buildings, walk in. The first thing I do when I go into the old Victorians is rip the carpet up in the hallway and just pray that they haven't got screed all over
original tiles and things.
And honestly, you know, when I do it and I see this poured concrete or screed or whatever it is, and I'm like, why? What were you thinking? And they're like, we're just trying to level it out. And I'm like, oh, you know.
You cover it with self-leveling compound, don't they? It's it's sad,
So what I'm sure a lot of people are interested in, I'm interested in, what are your tips or tricks? Let's say you've got a couple of scenarios. Let's say you're doing a renovation and you want to bring the house up to a new standard, yeah. So you can stand out from everyone else if you're renting it out. How do you make use of things like these cast iron fires, but also the coving and these beautiful, what do you call them things around the lights? Those roses around the lights, especially if you've got overboarding for fire regulations. How do you make use of all of this?
I mean, it's difficult. I can talk from my personal experience on the houses that I've renovated. Them ones I mentioned earlier, they're grade 2 listed buildings, so they come with a lot of nice features in there. Some of them are great to keep and kind of keep as a focal point. That one will always keep value to a house, and two, just looks great as well. You know, you want it to look good. I was converting them all to basically make self-services apartments inside them. So the first one I bought in Oak Terrace, it's just outside of Liverpool. It was 19 rooms, so it consisted of 4 stories in there. Now, no one in this day and age can really afford to live in a 19-room house. So I had to think of a way of, well, how do I make this cost effective to purchase it, to renovate it, which it needed about £300,000 all in all to renovate it. I mean, we had to underpin it. We were putting extensions on the back, and I even excavated underneath the building, underpinned it all, and then put an extra apartment in the bottom of it, which splits up into 2 ways. So it was a vast amount of work. And what I was trying to juggle around with is, what do I actually do on here without throwing, you know, $500,000 at it, which I couldn't afford to? What do I actually do to make this cost effective, keep the value of the property up, but then also make it pay me as a business? You know, I had to rent these apartments out, self-contained apartments. Now, the story behind this particular one, and it's great, it was so successful for me, I bought the house next door, which happened to be a 21-room house, 4 stories, and then the house next door to that sadly wasn't there. It was bombed in 1944 in the end of the Second World War. And I bought it as a building plot, and then I built it back up again, marrying in all the facial features, because it was grade 2 listed. I had to copy the 2 buildings at the side. Luckily I owned, and I could make some templates of all the dental courses of brickworks there to cast. I then rebuilt that into a 28-room house and got 5 apartments out of it. So I was left with these, let's say, 13 apartments on this block. Now, go back to kind of your question about trying to make it cost effective and work, and make it as a design features that people enjoy and actually want to live in it, you know, but also keep that thing in mind as it's commercial. You know, I got to make these pay for the next 15, 20 years. They've got to pay the mortgage off, because when I've bought them and invested all this money in them and all my physical time and all my labourer's time in it, they've got to pay the mortgages then over, you know, a 10, 15-year period. So I was always caught on that knife's edge of how much of the historical features do you keep, show, or what do you have to cover up? Because as you said, Tricia, there are sadly sometimes elements that you have to, let's say, proportion that big old, beautiful big old house up to make it pay. And that's what I'm always juggling with these old buildings. And I found that the initial features, certainly in the hall stairs and the landing, you always keep the banisters and the handrails, the beautiful big, you know, solid woodwork. The skilled, the workmanship skilled in that is just outstanding. You know, I couldn't do anything near that today. And then you look at all the covings going up and down the stairs, and as you say, the light, the fans around the lights, the patterns around the lights, they stand out, and that's what people get, the wow factor. So what I had to do is keep all them, or wanted to keep all of them in it. But then, unfortunately, the way some of the rooms were split up, I had to take ceilings out, where we did, unfortunately, lose some of the covings in there, and it did break my heart. And I chatted about this with the conservation planner, who also wants to have his input in these type of buildings, to kind of work out what's a happy medium. You know, they realised there was a house shortage. They realised the area, they needed more self-contained apartments in there. We're only moments away from the Liverpool hospital there, and we have about 40 odd tenants from the, you know, doctors and nurses that all live in there. So they were conscious that we're doing these up for a good reason. You know, we're serving a good purpose for the city and for the students in there. And that's where I had to make the decision then of, what do I take down, and then how do I kind of make something up to replicate it a little bit. And for me, I was trying to find, you know, even artificial covings that are made to look like the old buildings. So I'd like split out rooms, put different ceilings in with different heights, but then I got all these artificial covings, put them all back in place to kind of give the full impression that it is still 1853. You're walking into an old building, but you have all the benefits of the soundproof and the U value, you know, to keep these apartments, one, up to date with current regulations, of course, make them comfortable. The people are living in them. Remember, days
warm and stuff.
They've got to enjoy living in them as well as you know, make them work around them. So it was good, and you don't just find this out overnight. You know, for me, it's been a big journey of an experience of dealing with these situations as they come about. You know, in 33 years in the industry, I'm still learning today. I'm still learning every day.
Every day is a school day in property, for sure. There's always
it's great.
New challenge that presents itself. I mean, with you, so what kind of portfolio have you managed to build over this time? So you were talking a lot about, were they kind of bed sit styles? Did they have their own little kitchens in, or were they like
no, they were great. So going back to that one, the first one I bought was the 19-room house one. When I first bought that, the challenge was it was 2004, and this is casting my memory back now. It was in 2004, and we just set up I was working for the BBC doing makeover shows all over the world, generally for them. And then I bought this house as an investment, and we didn't have any filming on, I think, for about 4 or 5 months between series. So I thought, great, I'm going to jump straight on this. And then I'd been chatting to one of the Sky channels about doing a TV program following me on it. Now, we had our own television production company, and we hadn't, at that point, we didn't have a thing called a pack license where you could produce your own show for broadcast quality TV, you know. And I thought to myself, do you know what? Just the historical history behind this building, the beautiful look of it, you know, and then what I wanted to do to it, it just warranted the TV program. So I pitched an idea to the Home and Leisure channel, a 10-part series called Renovation Creation, and it was basically a 10-part show following me renovate this entire building. So I was making 4 apartments in the 19-room one, and I had to come up with a theme. So at the time, Liverpool had been shortlisted for the Capital of Culture, which they won in 2008. But we were shortlisted in the end of 2004 it was, just going into 2005. So I decided if I was going to modernise these 4 apartments in this oldie world historical house, I wanted to tie in the themes that I felt was quite iconic around Liverpool. One, of course, we've got the music and arts, you know, the Beatles and things like known worldwide. So one of the themes has got to be around music and arts.
So you built a yellow submarine in one of
them? Yeah. One of them was the maritime history as well. We've got, you know, fantastically well-famous docks there, you know, which at one point were the busiest docks in the world, you know, 100 years ago. So we wanted to tie in a bit of a maritime theme to one of them as well. We got to the 4th one and I couldn't think of a theme. So I thought Liverpool's got a fantastic future. So I decided to call one of the flats a futuristic theme and have everything in it completely white. And I used a designer, a good pal of mine called Gordon Wistance, and he was a BBC designer with us on the show. I think he works on DIY SOS now. He does the off-screen stuff for all the design on there with Nick Knowles. And I'd drawn him in to kind of help me with that kind of lovely finishing touches. I could do it all structurally. I could pull a building apart to its bare bones and rebuild it all back up again. But what I wanted was just him to come up with the nice little finishing touches of it, you know, to tie it all in.
The vision of the fluffiness at the end.
Absolutely, yeah. And he was brilliant, you know, and he learnt me a lot over the years. We learnt a hell of a lot from him in the design programs we've worked on. And it just helped knit all them little things together. So what I was juggling with is this property investment, which, as we know, sometimes always don't go to plan and sometimes aren't that easy, you know. Even now we're still learning today, but I also knew I've got to make profit out of this. I've got to keep focused on the end result out of it. I need to put value in the building and I need to make it livable and practical. But then on the other hand, my other side of the cap was I'm now producing, I'm going to be an exec producer on my first own show that I've had commissions of a 10-part series. So I'm juggling that budget as well. So that was the hard act of right, we'll stop all my builders from working one day, get the camera crews back in, let's do a little bit on this, delaying things that avenue, but then also making it TV friendly, interesting to watch, and also trying to make it a little bit educational, because I'm really hoping that the viewers watch this and then be inspired by, well, why don't you buy a rundown house? You know, these beautiful houses, you can pick them up relatively cheap still today from auctions, you know, buy them, do them all up, bring them back to life, and if you do them properly, you've got a good solid investment, you know, that can pay you for the rest of your life, you know. And that was always my kind of focus on it. This development I'm doing, it got to pay me for the rest of my life.
Exactly.
So yeah, it was good. It turned out fantastic. We got some amazing apartments in there that are still looking in quite good shape now. You know, that was what, 15 odd years ago when they were finished. The kitchens we put in them, I'm trying to think whose kitchens we put in them at the time. I think they were Wickes kitchens, and they're still holding out, you know, really, really well in there. We've done lovely floorings right the way throughout. We've done nice mixtures of hardwood floorings and engineered boards as well, which I always knew were going to stand their time, as opposed to putting a kind of a cheap laminate floor in there and not having to replace it again in 3 to 5 years. Because, again, I try to advise people when they're contemplating doing a house up, whether it's their first time or their 10th time, you know, everything boils down to budget, and some people have a budget this big, some people
and longevity as well, because when it's a rental property, you have to think, if you penny pinch now, you're going to be back in there in 6 months' time.
You're paying double. Yeah.
You know, what's the point? Just do it now before everyone gets in. It's an investment. It's a long-term investment. But at the same time, you know, if you're doing it properly, like the way we train people, it's like you're budgeting it all before you've even got into the deal. So you're already like, this is my spend to get it to this specification. Yeah. And of course, you know, challenges arise, things come up that you maybe don't account for, but that is what contingency is all about.
Yes, absolutely.
And it's just like, I mean, so what are some like big challenges, would you say, that you faced in property that has like caused you either a financial, like, I didn't account for this, or things that maybe people can learn from that they could maybe avoid? Like,
I think it's the unforeseen things, Trisha, that you can't always see on the surface, you know. Some of these properties that I've bought from auctions, I haven't had a surveyor go in there and look around them, and I would never advise people not to do that. But I've got a good element of knowledge of the structural, aspect of a building, and I know I'm going to go in there and rip the entire roof off, take every bit of timber out the house. So all I'm generally concerned about is the 4 square walls around it, how structurally sound they are, you know. But one thing that caught me out, and it was on that Oak Terrace project I was talking about. It was the second building that I bought then. That was the 21-room one. If you visualise this, what we could see on the front of the building, it's all hard rendered finish. It's got the bays coming out of it, and then a balcony on the top of the kind of the 3rd story of it. Quite typical, high pitched roofs. And what had happened was, when we got in there and we'd done all the usual rip out. We'd ripped out there was 2 or 3 levels of suspended ceilings, and this was on the top floor. Yeah, it was the 3rd floor. We put a mezzanine in them and got a 4th floor in them. We'd ripped out all the old plasterboards, the suspended ceilings that were in, and then we got back to the old kind of lath and plaster that was on there. You know, we'd ripped out all of that, and where the flush building at the front, and you've got the bay windows. The bay windows come up 3 ways. Well, on that balcony, that had been, the drains on there had never been cleaned out properly. They'd filled up over the years with leaf and all sorts of muck, and then started to just penetrate damp in around the little like kind of parapet wall around it, or around the handrail wall, and then just worm its way through the roof. So what happened consequently underneath that, you've got lintels. Now, they were only wooden lintels, remember, put in 1853. And we even found out further down the line that these lintels, they weren't even new in 1853. These big old timbers that they put in them, they had notches out of them. They were actually out of the sail of a ship. So they could have been 200, 300, 400 years old, you know. And of course, we're by the docks in Liverpool, so you know clearly what's happened. An old ship's come in and they've dismantled it. And the timber that's been available, a little bit what I do now, someone else grabs it and gives it a second life, you know.
Yeah.
So these timbers, sadly, there was 3 of them. And all the brickwork above it basically had started to drop down. These 3 timbers were falling away. We ripped all the boards off. I was sticking screwdrivers in them, and I literally could push them through. They were bouncing in weight.
Yeah.
And what you've also got to be cautious of, houses built in 1853 didn't have any cement in the brickwork. They were a lime mortar, a putty lime, you know. So it's not like you can just whip them lintels out and they're going to hold themselves up. They're generally not. And the problem I was faced is, if you're looking at a building, that's the front of the building here. I'm up there on the balcony. This is where the balcony wall. And behind that, where the lintels are, you've got these other 3 bays there. If that broke away, you could have these 3 bays come away from a building. Now, we had scaffolding all around. You can imagine the devastating impact that would have. That would take the scaffolding down, and it could consequently make the building, you know, concertina like this and break down. So it was, for me, not being able to see this until you rip it right down. Once we'd found it, I then had to work out a way of securing it up safely, obviously take everybody out of the building, and then I did it myself and actually took off brick by brick and restacking it all. We had a cherry picker taking the weight off the scaffolding and took it down as safely as possible, re-put new lintels in, and then build up back around it. So it was a slow, painstaking job that I had to do. You know, many people would have just said, oh, we'll just board all over it. It stood for 150 years. It might stand longer. But for me, I knew I was in it for the long term. I knew this is my property. I take pride in what I do. And I'm going to keep this for another 10, 20, 30 years. You know, who knows? So I wanted to do it right. So that little repair probably cost me about £12,000 or £15,000 to actually do it properly and safely. But for me, I thought, well, it's a job well spent. I can rest assured that now the whole front of that building is structurally sound. It's certainly going to see me out. You know, we put 3 new steel lintels in there and rebuilt all the brickwork on the bays above and the side of it, and the brickwork going above onto the roof.
I think what's funny, you know, these kind of properties, because we're the same. Like, we buy these houses, and for us, as long as they're kind of standing, that's good enough for us, because we knock them all out and totally restructure them anyway. And it's like we say, we should have shares in the RSJ companies by now. The amount of RSJ. Do you remember that one time? I don't know what happened, but it was like measured wrong or something. You ended up like one of the lads, because when you were a builder at the time.
That was before I was
oh my goodness! Yeah, and they arrived and they were too short, and you were just like.
No, that was before. I used to measure twice. I used to measure twice.
Yeah.
Sorry, I only
measured twice, cut once.
No, before I used to do it the other way around. I used to measure once and I have to cut it twice. Yeah, but too long is not too bad, but too short. And by the way, what the part you missed out is this was in those old houses, and we were doing a loft conversion. So this is 3 floors up.
Oh yes.
And this is when I was a young lad. And I used to get really creative. So we had tower scaffold on the outside of the house, and I knocked about 6 bricks out to just make a hole. Yeah, so we like bear hug this. This is real health and safety stuff. Yeah, bear hug. Two lads. We bear hug this thing up the outside of the tower scaffold, and then like levered it over to get it into that hole. And then we thought, and then the lad I was with, he was like, "Yeah, it's in." I was like, "No, you can't let go. There's only this much brickwork above it. If you let go of that, it's going to pull the roof off." So I had to hold it. He ran inside and he pulled it all the way through. And then we put the blues that we were going to put it on. And then I pulled it across. I was like, "Yeah, I'm on." He was like, "No, wait there a minute." And he pulled it back, and then my side fell off. I was like, "No, wait, what are you doing?" And then I pulled it back on, and then we realised it was too short.
Too short.
So we just left it.
It's got to have a certain length of load bearing, hasn't it?
No, it was just too short. So like that's still in that loft now. We just left it there. I just pushed it to the side. I was like, we'll cut another one. We're not messing about. So that's what she's talking about. But what I want to know is, because you're in the trade, and then you said you started. I don't know when you started investing. Was it 2004 or before then?
No, I'd actually invested before that. Yeah, I mean, I started in the actual building industry like at the end of the 80s, should I say, running the building company, and I bought my very first house. A house called Crane Cottage. In fact, I still own it now. We don't have, unfortunately, because of this coronavirus lockdown, but we normally have Harper Adams agriculture students living there now, and it was my first house. So I bought that back in, I'm going to guess 1996. I think it was 1996, 97. And it was a ruggedy old cottage again. An old boy called Mr. Crane owns it. That's why I got the name Crane Cottage. And I remember getting that and tearing it to pieces. And I'll tell you how bad it was. They wouldn't give me a mortgage against it we lived in a little pub up the road called the Shakespeare Inn pub in Newport, Shropshire. And I lived there with my mum and stepfather, and I run a building company there. Now, this little cottage we found, they wouldn't even give me a mortgage on it because it was that badly out of shape, you know. The roof needed replacing on it. All the doorways were so short. I mean, even I'm a shorty, you know, and I was nearly banging my heads on the doorway, so I had to take out all the lintels above the doors.
We could have lived there, Craig. I'm only 4'11". You could have left it for us.
No, didn't go under them. So all them had to be done. I had to put a new fence right round it, to put new windows in it, what else, front and back door. So I had to do an extensive amount of work on it before the mortgage company would kind of give me the money. So for me, it was like, it was bridging fundings, you know, which can be quite expensive in some aspects, but if you're doing it short term, it's okay and it's feasible to do. So I had to lend this money, get in this house, rip it all to bits, get it all completed. And are you ready for this? I was living in a caravan on the drive with no electric, no gas, no running water. I'd go to the gym every night to have a shower after work. I'd go to the supermarket in the morning to brush my teeth and have a shave. And then I'd just either go to work for my customers and then come home. 4 o'clock, I'd try and get home and then work on the house right the way up until it got dark. And then I'd just sleep in the caravan. But I just had to hammer it. You know,
those are the stories that have made you the humble man you are today.
Honestly, I'd say I'm like steptoe son, but it's all paid off dividends in the end, you know, because I think that house, if I recall back now, in 1990, I think it was 6, maybe just going into 7, I paid about £62,000 for it. I did, you know, a lot of work, and I did it all myself, so, you know, it wasn't really costing that much at the time. Up until about 98, and then I built a huge big workshop at the back. Now this workshop was about 110 square meters. Little did I know, many years on, that would then be converted into a 4-bedroom bungalow. But I wasn't thinking about it at the time because I just needed a large space to run my building company. I had lots of plant equipment, you know, tens of thousands of pounds worth of tools. And I think, yeah, I remember my insurance company insisted that the amount of tools and plant equipment and things I had, they had to be stored in a brick building. So I was thinking to myself, I've got to make this investment and build this structure. So in my mind, I was thinking, okay, I can knock it up out of block quite quick and easy, put a pitch roof on it, etc. It ticks the boxes for the insurance. It's a good workshop. But then I thought to myself, well, if I invest a little bit more and I put insulation in the floor, and I build it a cavity wall in there and put insulation in it, it's a little bit of a posh workshop, let's say, an expensive workshop, but it can convert into a bungalow further down the line, because if I put all this infrastructure in now and keep the building regulations up to that date of what they were, I think this was in about 98. And I've got an interesting story now coming on to this now, because believe it or not, I got a demolition order served upon me. In this building, because I
Craig with no planning.
Well, no, listen to this, and I'm not telling people to do what I'm not advising people to do what I did, but I've been a bit of a smart arse, pushed the boundaries as far as I could with planning. Now, all planning districts are a bit different all around the country, and I built this workshop, nearly 110 square meters. As long as I built it 5 meters away from my existing dwelling, so far away from my boundary, and I kept the ridge of the pitch roof under 4 meters, which I did by 10 mil. I could use up 50% of my garden space. So I remember the building control, it was Telford Region Council at the time, come round, they looked at this foundations that I put in, which was bigger than my cottage, the footprint, was just like, what? This is a workshop, a personal workshop? I was like, yeah. He said, you can't, this is wrong. He said, you haven't put planning permission in for this. I said, I don't need it. It's building regulations. He said, no, Craig, something this size, you need planning. I don't. So we had this standoff. Bear in mind, this was about 1998. The internet there wasn't serving like it is today, you know, and all this information is at your fingertips. So he come into my house. He didn't even have a mobile phone. He come into my cottage and he phoned up Telford Region Council. I stood there with him and he said, got these plans in front of me. He's put an application in only yesterday for building regulations, and he's building this monstrosity of a workshop. So I'm standing there and I see his face going, yeah, it's 50% of his garden space, which I maxed out on that. I kept it exactly 5 meters away from my building, 10 mil below 4 meters on the ridge of the pitch, and a meter or so away from my boundary fence. Anyway, I could hear him saying it, and they were even referring to the book, you know, at the time. And then he was just kind of like, he didn't like it, but he went, yeah, you kind of can. But to be quite honest, he's seen his arse from that moment. And we still, many years later, had a kind of a battle with him, you know, because then what happened? I carried on building it. The brickwork went up, and then he kept coming round saying, and he wasn't happy, you know, he was coming to inspect this. Why are you putting insulation in it? Well, if I'm working in my workshop, I want it to be comfortable for me. Why are you putting insulation in the wall? You don't need this in a workshop. Well, I didn't want to tell him that further down the line, I may consider turning this into a bungalow. But I was in my mind thinking, you know what? I'm just building a workshop and I want it comfortable for me. Yeah. I'm going to be running my building company, you know, for a long time. Little did I know Big Brother was round the corner. You know, I had no generally idea, you know. So I thought this on, and we because I couldn't build it all, I didn't have the money to build it all straight away. And I had a guess, I think this was costing me about, let's say about £50,000, which was a hell of a lot of money back in '96. And I thought to myself, I couldn't afford to, I couldn't lend any more money. So all I could do is hammer it for a week's work and then jump back onto tools for my customers, hammer it on the site for a month or two, come back with a load of money and then jump back onto this. So this build kind of probably took about a year to do, and I was doing it more or less all myself. I had the odd tradesman helping me here and there when I could afford them, you know. Anyway, this time went by, and all of a sudden he was saying to me, well, Craig, now it's that big. You need to put a door in there for those, so you need to put that in there. And what he kind of did was he led me down a little bit of path, and to be honest, I didn't see it coming, that he was kind of looking at it, it's turning into a commercial building. Now, for me, it wasn't, because by law, you can, running as a sole trader, which I was then, you can have a big workshop at home, you know, and you can actually build a storage workshop to this size, 50% of your garden space. So what I technically done was, and try and cut the story short, was I bent the law as far as I could without snapping it. I didn't break the law at any point. And all along this journey, we kept having a battle about every little measurement, and he was just trying to knock me down and stop me in every way, but he couldn't. And I got it completed. When I got it finished, I asked him to give me the sign-off certificate. This is where the problem started to unveil. He then said, well, it's deemed as commercial, so you have to put an application in for commercial use. So I thought, okay, keep the peace. He just wants a bit more money out of me for an application, so I put it in. I got it rejected. I appealed. Months later, I got it rejected. So I was like, oh, now I'm in a bit of a sticky situation here. You know, I had to get a solicitor onto it. And then when then all of a sudden, I was going through the applications at Big Brother. And then Big Brother was like keeping everything hush hush. You got to go into this house, you can't tell anybody, you know, and I'm juggling my building company, I've got 30 staff, I'm trying to finish off my workshop and get it signed off, and now all of a sudden I got a legal battle opening with the council. Where do I go from here, you know? Do I go into the Big Brother house and let this run its course?
Building control come in on a special task.
Yeah. And I remember going to this, it was like a hearing that the council had about my workshop. And I could go in as a spectator, as a public spectator, but I wasn't allowed to comment. So I sat there listening to some of these, I won't mention names, these MPs at the time, and I listened to the councillors and things like that going on about my workshop being excessively too big and this, that and the other, and I hadn't abided by the rules and regulations, which I knew fair well I had, and I still stand today. Then regulations at that time, I did stick to them as far as I could. I bent them as far as I could, I just didn't snap them. Anyway, this kind of appeal thing went on. I got rejected again, and I just thought, you know what? I got this mail come through, and it said, you have 30 days to take the building down. And I was just like, oh no, where do we go from here? And then the next day, I got a phone call from Endemol, the Big Brother production company, to say, Craig, you're now selected to be one of the 10 people to go in the Big Brother house. I was like, okay. So I went in that Big Brother house, not saying a single word to anybody, certainly not on TV, you know, and not nobody in the house or anything like that, whether that was going to get knocked down or not.
You were going to come back to
any contact with the outside world. I just left my solicitor to kind of deal with it. And sure enough, he dealt with it and he fought it on through. And then I eventually did get the planning consent, you know, through in the end, that they passed it as a domestic garage used for storage space, where I could run my building company, but not run a business from there, but just store all my plant equipment and tools. We actually got it signed off just about a day before the demolition order was due to be served, you know, after 30 days. So, but I didn't know about this because I was still in the Big Brother house. I remember coming out and it was mayhem, as you can imagine, after that first Big Brother. And then I'm trying to like whisper to people and trying to find out, is my garage still there? Is it still there? Anyway, it is still there. You will be pleased to know. And of course, I did never get to run my building company then for customers. So a lot of this plant equipment that I had, I didn't really need, end up giving away, selling it and things like that. And it just got used as a kind of a storage space for nothing. And then in about 2003, we got some more TV shows commissioned where I was doing woodwork shows. So we turned it into a bit of a studio. So then we just kind of got used on and off throughout the year as a TV studio, as a photographic studio. You know, it was a bit of a wasted space. And then, you know what, we said in 2004, I bought the big 19-room house. So I was busy with that. 2004, 5, 6, 7, and 8, I bought number 2, the 21-room house, and then rebuilt the 28-room house, 5 apartments for number 1, the house that was bombed in the war. And then I was still sitting on this beautiful workshop with insulation in the walls, floors, ceilings, pitch roof. I decided, let's go back to Telford Council. Believe it or not, that planner was still there.
Awesome.
It's me again.
Guess what?
Yeah, I'm putting a new application in. Use. I'm going to turn this garage that you never liked, this workshop, into a 4-bedroom bungalow. And after a few discussions and tweaks with plans and things like that, he couldn't turn it down. And the structure was all there. The insulation paid off in the walls, floors, and ceilings. So the moral of my story is me putting that extra time and investment in the early days has certainly paid dividends. You know, that building probably cost me about £50,000 to build that workshop. And it's a 4-bedroom bungalow in Newport, Shropshire. Now it's probably worth £300,000, you know, and it brings me quite a good rental income from students that are there.
And not only that, you've got the most hilarious story that while everybody else was thinking, wow, I'm in this Big Brother, I have no idea what this show's going to be, and you know, have no idea that you were eventually going to become the winner, all you were thinking about is my garage still going to be there?
It's going to be a pile of rubble that the council are going to send me a bill for removing. That's generally what I was thinking, you know. So it was scary times, but my gut instinct, you know, I knew I wasn't breaking the law, you know, because I wouldn't do that. And I just thought it'll have to come out in the end, and you know, hopefully
you have to play with them. You have to go back and forth, play the game. Yeah,
of course, you know. And a lot of people are put off and are a little bit intimidated sometimes by the planners, but you know, try and start off on a good shoe, not like me on that particular one. And I generally had a good working relationship with the planners, you know, because I've done a lot of buildings for other customers and things of mine. But on that particular one, I roused them up the wrong way. We didn't get off from the first day he come round, and we had a bit of a headache, let's say, further down the line. But it is paid off. So my advice to anyone who's planning anything like that is speak to the planners first, get them on your side. Yeah. Talk about your scheme, explain it all with them, ask them what they think about it. You know, you can get, before you even spend your money on putting applications in on change of use, or if you're putting extensions in or new builds, you know, have a sit down meeting with them. I mean, I think it's about £50, £70. Have an hour with them and just talk about your plans first. Say, this is what I want, and ask them what they think. You know, does that work with that? What's your opinion on that? And you kind of get a good working relationship with them, a little bit of building up a trust. You're both singing off the same hymn sheet. So when you go into your property and start to do the build on it, you know, when you're calling them out to do your inspections, whether it's internally on fire escapes, whether it's windows, doors you're putting in, or an extension, your foundations you're putting in, they're coming out and you've already built a bit of a relationship up with them, you know, and it's going to make life easier, in my opinion, going forward with them on your developments. Because the last thing you want is, you know, for you to do something a little bit wrong and then all of a sudden, you know, the planner's coming out saying, not happy with that, I want you to change it, because then it's not cost effective, you know, you're wasting more time and spending more money on there.
That's
So,
it.
bit of forward planning, I think.
Absolutely. And someone's put in there, the more of that is persistence.
Yes.
So what we want to do now is want to just have some quick fire questions. We've got a few questions people have been asking. So if you could fire them off. So the first one is, like, how have you seen the industry change from your first property through 206, 7, 8, and then up until now? How have you seen
I mean, what have I seen to change different in that? As opposed for the finding the properties and the working out what you've got to invest in them to make them livable, make them rentable or sellable, hasn't changed a massive amount, because the type of work on them is all still the same. You know, maybe some of the regulations on insulation and soundproofing have increased. So a lot more, you know, certainly some more investment has to be made on them. The time turnaround on them is very similar. It's just about getting the finance is a lot more different, certainly nowadays, and what's happening currently, you know, with the COVID-19, should I say. So I think the big changes, I mean, me from being, buying my first house in 96, 97, up until, say, 2006 or 7, before we hit the rocky roads with the economy again, I found lending money there was relatively easy. You could do a property up and it looks good, it put value to it. You could lend the money off that to buy the second one and the third one. And I've done that, you know, over the years. I have 22 properties now. So that's helped me in buying a property that you can't mortgage, loaning it, doing it up, lending the money, paying off what you've spent on it. And then, you know, you've got a building there that is got a buy-to-let mortgage on it, it's paying its way. You've still got some collateral in it, so lend a bit more out of that to get the next property and get the next property. So I think for your question of where have I seen that, the difference in that, the model, finding them, doing them up is similar. The timescale doing them up similar. Costing's a little bit higher, but getting the money is a little bit more difficult. That's the biggest change that I've seen, because we know, you know, after 2008 and 9 and the economy, and you know, the government's changed the licensing laws with banks about how they lend money. You know, a bank used to only have to have, I mean, in a roundabout figure, you know, if someone wanted to lend £1 million, the bank only used to have to have 0.5% of that in cash funds, and then they could lend that money to be able to lend you. And I think the Conservatives moved that goalpost in about 2011 maybe. Times flew really quick. Maybe 2011 or 12. David Cameron moved them goalposts where licensed banks to lend that money had to have, if you wanted to lend $1 million, they had to have 16% of that. So all of a sudden, the banks have to have 32 times that amount of money to be able to lend you the money that you require. So it was harder to lend the money, but it was also harder for the banks to give the money out, you know. So I've seen that change certainly from after 2010 or 11 mark. You know, it and it certainly hasn't been an easy thing, you know. Even now, when I've kind of property rich and collateral rich in it, it's still sometimes harder to lend money now in this current climate, you know, because the banks again have to stress test things. You know, they look at how much they're lending you, and if the Bank of England's base rate changes dramatically and then your loans go up, you know, how can you service that? Can you still possibly afford to do that? You know, and I'm lucky. I don't always have to rely on a property income. I have my media side of income too. So, you know, sometimes if that's running a little bit slow at the time and things, I can prop it up a little bit with my media side of things. But when banks look at the loaning side of things, that they don't take your second income that much into consideration, or they haven't, certainly with me. Maybe it just might be vulnerable because your media, you know, media can come or go, you know, at any time. So I think that's where I've seen big changes. Yeah.
Okay, awesome. So what do you see the difference over this with the coronavirus? Has that affected you anyway? Has that made you slow down, pull back? Are you waiting? Or are you still moving forward?
I think majority of people are a little bit stalemate at the moment. Sadly, I do see a bit of a drop in house prices, which when any bad situation, you know, whether it's you know, like what we're seeing now, world pandemic, there's winners and there's losers, you know, and I think this pandemic, there's going to be a lot more losers when I mean in businesses and job losses and every industry, more or less 99% of industries are going to be hit hard from this. And quite often, you know, the building, the property development industries do get hit the hardest when we have recessions. And this is a kind of form of recession. So if you're in the area where you're buying houses and you're cash rich, you're going to be a winner. I believe, you know, you're going to be able to step in and buy properties, probably cheaper than what you could do 4 months ago. Certainly cheaper than what you could do 4 months ago.
It's becoming a buyer's market. Pick up the deal in the January sales.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, you know, the people are going to be a little bit scared. I mean, you know, a lot of my tenants, we got some great tenants, have been there a long time, you know. Some of them genuinely couldn't afford to pay their rent because their jobs were, they were self-employed, and all of a sudden their income stops. We've got a lot of students in there, you know, and we mentioned earlier a lot of the doctors and nurses, you know. Some of our students, they're mature students, they're 30, 40 years of age, you know, and some of them are foreign students coming to stay and practice here in Liverpool. And their kind of income has gone up and down, you know, and we've had to give reductions out for some of them to just make life a little bit easier. And I think if everyone be sensible about it and don't just stop paying because you know, the Prime Minister said that you can't have 21 saved upon you if you can't afford your rent. I think that kind of give a majority of people a license to kind of say, well, you know what, I'm not going to pay, type of thing.
We totally get that. We totally get that. That is like a law of attraction. You know, how you play the game in this time. If you stop paying, if you want to start playing with numbers and loans and payment breaks when you don't need to, then that's going to come your way. I mean, people in the real life, this is music to some of their ears that people are going to slow down. Not that I want people to slow down because the economy slows down, but when other people slow down, it's like what Warren Buffett says, you know, when people are fearful, get greedy. So all these people that are living in fear, they're slowing down. And it's funny that you say about the only thing that's got harder is to lend the money. Because if your deals stack up, then they definitely lend you the money.
Because the banks want to do business. You know, they need to do business.
They have to. They have to
lend the money. They're not in business themselves, really.
Yeah, they got to do that. They got to do that. And we teach people to invest in property with none of their own money. Yeah, so the whole recycling, which you know, a lot of people who maybe started investing at your time, even before your time, even still now, they're working on that recycling process. So it will be interesting to see, you know, if it was something that you're going for aggressive growth. We don't wait for things to have to recycle. We go out and find the money, fund the money, because you either wait or you can expand.
Yeah, I think, you know, what we as a nation do as well, and we're certainly probably a bit discouraged by the media and the politicians and things. You can easily talk yourself into a recession, can't you? I remember going back to like 2009 and 8 and 10. You know, I remember my pals telling me, you know, all this hype about a recession, it's going to be bad. And I know the big banks crashed and it has a knock-on effect. I get that. But a lot of my friends, they still work for a company. They still have the same wage. Just all of a sudden, they weren't buying a new car. They weren't going on holiday. So they weren't generally spending, which has
you got more money. No restaurants, no going out shopping, all that stuff.
They were panicking, and because they've been talked into, there's a recession, you know, it's going to affect us all. But what I'm trying to say to people now, in this current climate, you know, not just for my tenants to pay the rent and things, but if everyone just sensibly, don't run out and panic buy all the toilet rolls in the supermarket. You know, just carry on buying what you need. They're capable of making enough. We've all been, you know, able to buy toilet roll and use it. We're not going to use it anymore. We just, because people are full buying, you know, because they're panicking a little bit. If everyone sensibly carries on spending, pull back a little bit on some of the essential things, you know, keep the essential things that you're going, but still carry on paying your rent, still carry on investing, still carry on trying to do the best you can. And that not just helps you, but that helps everyone else because they get their bit of money. They can still spend it then on this. Someone else can spend it on that, and it keeps everything circulating as much as it possibly can under this current climate, you know.
Yeah, but think about it. In a normal circumstance, without all this hype in the media, if someone lost their job because their company was whatever not operating anymore or is not able to pay them, so they're out, they would just go and get another job. But in this day and age, people like this whole thing is almost used as an excuse to not go out there or to act as that thing. And that's another thing that, you know, we talk about extensively. Here's some quick fire. There's got to be super quick fire because at 8 o'clock we got a mastermind for the Real Life Tribe members that we have.
Okay, cool.
So people are asking, what areas do you operate in, Craig?
Areas, my properties are Liverpool and Shropshire.
All Liverpool and Shropshire. Okay. Do you have HMOs or any service accommodations?
Yes, some of them are HMOs, multi-occupancy ones. Some of them are just personal houses that, you know, families live in them. Bit of everything we have. Yeah,
and then also somebody's asking, what is your strategy? Do you have multiple strategies? What's your mainline strategy?
I think my mainline strategy is on a property, you know, I kind of look at it and try and break the cost of it up. X amount, a third of it to purchase, a third of it to spend on refurbishing it, and a third of it to kind of be the profit or the collateral in that. So I work on that kind of strategy. If I focus on them three, and whatever it takes to do that, I try to keep that profit margin up further down the line. And whether that means me doing most of the physical work myself, I'll do that to keep it within that budget.
Do you still do that now?
Yeah, I absolutely love it. Building work. I mean, I've just built my own dream house here. Have a little look on my website, craigphillips.co.uk, and have a little look at the pictures of this dream house that I've built. And, you know, I remember putting that together thinking, and everyone was saying, oh, that's going to cost you, you know, £1 million, £2 million to build. And I was like, no, I'll do it for under $500,000. I promise you I'll do it for under $500,000. And I did. I brought it in on budget.
Good, awesome. And then I can't find the question, but I remember it. Someone was asking, they're doing deals. This is somebody from our tribe as well. They said they're doing deals in Liverpool right now. That's their area. And they got a few things going through planning. Do you have any contacts?
No, I don't have any contacts.
What about your building control friend?
Building control, no, they were Telford Region Council. Them guys who I'd fallen out with. No, the Liverpool Council I found great, actually. I've recently worked with Liverpool City Centre Council and also St Helens Council as well. I found them brilliant, to be honest.
What an area Liverpool is to invest in. The properties there are outstanding. They're so vast inside. Yeah. I was there not long. Well, actually, I was in the Wirral, and I got told off by my friends because they were like, "That's not Scouse. That's not Liverpool. It's Wirral." And I was like, "Right, all right."
Yeah. When you go under that water, that mile-long tunnel, you need a passport when you go over there. Yeah.
Awesome.
Oh wow, Craig, you've been amazing.
Thank you so much for joining us.
My pleasure.
Where can people find you? Where can people find more of these DIY tips?
I mean, at the moment, people in lockdown, check us out on social media. Craig Big Bro 1 is my Instagram account. And also me and the wife, I've got Mr. and Mrs. DIY TV. That's both on Instagram and Facebook.
Awesome. So that's where you can find Craig. He's been awesome. Any questions that you've put in here, I believe we've got answered. But whenever you're watching this, keep asking the questions. And what's interesting, nothing has changed. The principles are the same. Maybe just a few things around building regulations, building control officers have changed, or maybe they don't change. But like what I want to let you know about right now is all of these things that we're talking about, all the things to make things happen, all the things that have happened in Craig's life that have worked, all the things that haven't worked do come down to these principles that we will be discussing on Wednesday at 7 o'clock. So if you haven't, have you put that in there? Yeah, have you put that in there? The link, yeah. If you haven't registered already, this is a private free training for 2 hours on discovering your true potential. This is understanding how you can actually not just succeed by accident, not just succeed when things are going up, because like Craig says, a lot of people are going to suffer right now. A lot of people are going to suffer because of the jobs, because of the mindset, because of the way they're viewing the situation. So if you want to know how you can get the best out of this situation right now and be one of those multi-millionaires that are created during downtimes. I mean, look, I heard this stat. I don't know how true it is, I didn't have a time to verify the exact percentage, but it is high. That 50% of the Fortune 500 companies right now were created in the last recession. 50%.
Wow.
50% of the Fortune 500 companies was created then. I mean, I know Airbnb and Dropbox and all of these babies are billions and billions dollar companies were all created then. So discover your true potential. It's in the comments right now. Get yourself registered. It's on Wednesday, the 20th of May, 7 o'clock. And listen, oh my goodness, we ended on Instagram. We took so long. Yeah. So,
Been waffling on too much.
We had so many awesome stories, Craig. It's all right.
I could go on for weeks.
I can. That's why I'm loving it. We're so matching here.
We had a comment, Craig, that someone said they never see me and Trisha so quiet. So you're good stories. So thank you so much, guys. Real life.
Pleasure, Mark, Trisha.
Awesome to have you.
See you again soon.